So welcome everyone to episode 5. Hello, esteemed audience, distinguished guests, and healthcare enthusiasts. Welcome to episode 5, Decoding AI in Healthcare. My name is Dipu Patel, and I'm joined by Dr. Amit Day, who is our co-host, and we are excited to have our guest today, Dr. Harvey Castro. We're with more than 2 decades of experience as a physician, entrepreneur, and former health system CEO. Dr. Harvey has made significant contributions to healthcare management, physician collaboration, and the integration of healthcare management into modern practices. Dr. Harvey's dedication to advancing healthcare through AI is further exemplified by his role as a strategic advisor for ChatGPT and healthcare. He envisions a seamless partnership between healthcare professionals, AI developers, and innovative AI solutions. But that's not all. He's also dedicated to raising awareness and driving action in the AI-driven healthcare space. His unique insights are sure to ignite your curiosity. Welcome, Dr. Harvey Castro.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. I'm really excited about today's episode.
Great. And of course, Dr. Amit Day, our co-host here, distinguished physician and diabetologist. Dr. Amit is not only an expert in his field, but also an innovative AI entrepreneur. And his commitment to healthcare evolution through innovation is truly inspiring. Welcome, Dr. Day.
Thank you very much, Dipu, for the kind introduction. A warm welcome to Harvey. And I think all three of us have been looking forward to this episode, talking about ChatGPT and the use of it for doctors, healthcare professionals. So without wasting much time, Deepu, Harvey, I'm sure there are a lot of questions to ask and answer, a lot of facts to delve into. So let's quickly get into the topic. Uh, Harvey, we have got a great diverse number of viewers waiting to listen from you about what exactly ChatGPT is. So give our viewers and listeners a very basic overview of this GPT foundation model and where does it stand as of today in terms of the development. Harvey.
Yeah, great question. I always like comparing ChatGPT to having the smartest female friend or male friend that you have in the world, whoever that is, that you can ask him or her any question 24/7, and that friend will always answer back, will always give you information. The problem is your friend doesn't like to be wrong, and sometimes your friend will give you lies and will still tell you things. And that to me is ChatGPT. It's a friend that is the highest IQ person that you'll ever know, and it'll give you the information. The key, like I said, is you got to make sure that that person's not lying to you. And so where it stands today, to the second part, I'm really stoked. ChatGPT is doing so many things. It's adding more languages, more functions, and we'll go into that in the show. But it's doing a lot more things than we can imagine. And moving forward, we'll talk about multimodality, which is another layer of this. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, Harvey. I like that you led with your best female friend and male friend, because I do think that definitely is an aspect of ChatGPT. The other part is, unlike humans, ChatGPT is not going to get tired of you kind of asking it questions in an inexhaustible manner, right? So I think it's definitely got a lot of potential, and I do think, and tell me if you agree, we're just at the tip of the iceberg here with this technology.
Yeah, we're at the tip, and I do want to add to the analogy. Our friend, our female friend here, ChatGPT, she sometimes, if we talk too long to her, she will forget what we started talking about.
That's
And so
true.
that is one of the flaws of ChatGPT. With that said, with the technology, like you said, it's in infant size. Moving forward, that memory will get longer and longer, and there's ways of manipulating that conversation to make sure that that conversation continues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you made a very good start there, Harvey, comparing the Chat GPT with a counterpart partner. I wouldn't call it a female friend. I would say a counterpart partner. That could be a male friend as well. So let's not get gender biased here.
That's true.
But
That's true.
whenever,
Yeah.
but
Fair
whenever
enough.
you need to kind of connect with your counterpart partner, you need to give a good prompt. So I think that's the way it goes. So a good prompt is definitely needed, to get a good desired output in ChatGPT. Most of us who have used it, we have realized that prompting is an art, and there is something called prompt engineering, which is basically the science of learning this art. From a doctor's point of view, Harvey, as a healthcare professional, how do you learn this art? How you do go about with it? What are your thoughts?
Very well said. As a healthcare professional, we wear the doctor hat. And when we put that doctor hat, how we speak is we speak in the language of a doctor. And the nice part is when we compare apples and oranges, when patients speak to ChatGPT, they don't talk to it like a doctor. And because of that, that actually changes the way we prompt, changes the way we converse with ChatGPT. And that is why often a patient will ask a question and a doctor will ask a question, and the two outputs are totally different. And so, because it's in such an important art to learn, doctors have a little bit of an advantage because if they're using it for medicine, they're using the medical terminology. They look at the output that came out of ChatGPT and says, you know what, this was wrong. Let me find my question. Let me fine tune it a little bit. And then they're able to get better results. But from a 10,000 feet high, I really think it's like riding a bike. The more you do it, the more you change the way you ask questions. You're like, whoa, that question was really good. Let me ask that this way moving forward. Just a quick tip for everybody out there. No matter what ChatGPT tells me, I always say, is that your best answer? Can you refine that? Is there anything that's missing? And just that simple follow-up question gives you another output that's always better than the first, which is always amazing to me.
That's a great point. Would you mind touching upon the settings such as temperature, Harvey, just briefly at a surface level?
Yeah. So talking about temperature is kind of cool. Think of it this way. You have your friend and you can tell your friend, hey, let's think outside the box, very creative. And then that is one extreme of the temperature. The other extreme would be like, I don't want any out of the box thinking. I just want you to tell me strictly as close as possible to what the facts are. And that's the other side of the temperature. For everybody out there that does not have ChatGPT, I'll encourage you to go to bing.com and then go to chat. And at the bottom, it'll tell you, it'll give you settings, and that's actually the temperature. They don't advertise it as a temperature.
Right.
But that's a really good point. So thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah. And I think the reason I think that's important is when we're looking for certain fact-based knowledge and output from our prompts, the temperature can really help guide both the patient and the provider, right, in your prompting and making sure that what it's kind of giving you is factually correct versus that more on the hallucination side of things, or innovative thinking, I guess, for lack of a better word. And just to piggy off of what you had said earlier in terms of how healthcare professionals use ChatGPT and the terminology that we use versus patients, when I teach my students in the PA programs, I tell them that we're going to learn the $50 words, right? That's the medical terminology. But you're going to also have to learn the $5 words so that you can explain it to the patients at the level that they are at. And so really a balance of both of those is needed in order for you to get the information you need as a healthcare provider, but then also putting it in lay terms for patients so that they can get the information they need. So there's like a kind of a two-way dialogue that can happen.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add one more comment there, that the temperature is something also that kind of you develop as an art. And I think what we're trying to say here is this: just like none of us taught us how to browse the internet. It's an art that we are all going to learn over the more you use, the more you develop this art of how to give the right prompt, how to create a temperature. And I think it customizes and learns very well. There is the setting wherein you can actually kind of train how to create the prompt, that is also there in ChatGPT. And I think Harvey is going to tell us about that more. So Dipu, you want to go ahead with the next question?
Yeah, so actually that segues very nicely. So what are the new developments? I know ChatGPT 4 has really kind of taken the world by storm in terms of the number of features that it now has. Tell us about the plugins and the ADAs and what are the potential uses, not only for healthcare, but the coolness factor, I guess, for other professions as well.
Yeah. Okay, so this is really fun. ChatGPT, it's always growing. I'm going to give a pearl out there. If you ever notice a lot of movement from ChatGPT, ask yourself why. And my answer back is, I think personally, it's other competition. In this particular case, I think we're seeing so many things happen in the last couple of weeks that I believe Google Gemini is going to come out. We can chat about that later. And then going over the functions, I pulled it up on mine so I can go over all of them. The number one thing people will start with saying is, you know what, ChatGPT doesn't know anything after September 2021, and it's useless to me. Well, uh, OpenAI added a couple of functions to address that problem. From a superficial level, they added Browse with Bing, which is basically you're able to use ChatGPT, ask a question. It's using Bing. In theory, think of Bing like Google, and then it goes on the internet. And then here's the nice part: it gives you references, it gives you where it got it, and then it gives you the hyperlinks. And then it sort of bypasses. If you ask ChatGPT without Bing, you say who won the World Cup, it won't know. But if you ask it with Bing, it'll know who won the last World Cup because of that. Now, moving a little forward, I'm going to skip through ADA for just a second and go into plugins. Plugins is really cool because there's some plugins that are acting like Bing, but in my opinion, a little better. And so think of the plugin that just adds another companion software to ChatGPT that now allows you to surf the web, now allows you to get on YouTube, take the whole transcription of what's being said. And not only that, go into a website and go through the entire page. So now you're using the power of ChatGPT plus the plugin. And now the plugin, think of it as different friends of different specialties. I'm just giving one example, which is the internet. There's over 1,000 plugins right now. And on November 4th of this year, ChatGPT OpenAI is having a developer plugin uh, program, and that is going to just explode. And I wouldn't be surprised if on that day they acted like an Apple event where they're going to start showing off some new plugins and functions. So I can't wait for that day personally. And so moving towards, and then I have to do a little selfish plug-in. One of the things I talked about is, and I'll just mention it real brief, is a plugin called Decision Matrix. And the skinny is you ask it any question and it uses the power of ChatGPT and it combines and it gives you information back. So those are different ones. Now, going into ADA, I love ADA. It used to be, oh my gosh, I already forgot what's the other name for it. Anyway, do you remember what that was the last name for ADA?
Do
It
you?
was, oh my God, I used to say it all the time. Anyway, ADA
Yeah,
basically.
ADA is just for our viewers. ADA means Advanced Data Analysis, which is just another added-on tool for as along with the plugins. Harvey is going to tell us more about.
Yeah, so advanced data analysis, it used to have another name, and I can't believe I'm going blank because that was the name I memorized. But anyway, think of it this way: it's freaking amazing. It's a way to upload anything you want other than pictures. Let me explain. So if you have, like, here's an example of some of the things that I've personally done. Think of adding any information, uploading it, and then having ChatGPT analyze that database and then talk to you. So people have put PDFs, people have put PowerPoints. One of the things that I did is I had to give a talk to a C-suite of 10 individuals that I knew who they were, what industries they were, and I uploaded my PowerPoint. I put in the list of the speakers, and I said, "Give me a list of PowerPoints for what I should say that matches my PowerPoint." And it looked at their industry, it looked at my PowerPoint, and it gave me slides for every single one of them. So I added it to my conversation. Amazing. Other geeky stuff. Sometimes my colleagues will send me an MP3 or a picture or a certain format. And like, for example, behind me, it has to be a certain format. Then I can upload it to ChatGPT under ADA and say, hey, change this JPEG now to this per pixels or this size, which is crazy. Other things I've done just for fun, I took my LinkedIn profile, I uploaded the picture and I said, make this into a video. And then it made it into a video. Just amazing. And that's just simple. I know other people that are data scientists have been using it to put in their data files so they can look at it and analyze it, reformat them, stuff like that. And the last one that's really cool, actually, there's two more that's really cool. Dolly 3 is kind of think of it like Midjourney. But here's the best part. With Midjourney, I hate it personally because you have to go into Discord, and I don't like Discord that much. And the interface to me takes a while, and you got to memorize certain key functions. Here, you don't have to do anything. You literally just type in, "Hey, I need a picture of these three people on stage right now," and it'll make it. And then the more specific you are, it'll do it. But here's the best part: if you don't know how to describe things, you can ask ChatGPT, "Give me the best way of describing these pictures that I need," and it'll describe it and make it. So if you haven't played with Dolly 3, go on Google, type in Dolly 3, and then look at the images that you'll find. It's unreal. And then the last that I'm really, really stoked, and I was like a little kid behind my computer, like every other day, just trying to figure out if I got it, was the ChatGPT V4, which is the vision portion. And that's so cool. As a doctor and wearing a doctor lens, I was able to upload EKGs, and it gave me the breakout of how the EKG is read, what it should be done, just like a med student, like how you're supposed to do it. Then I gave it an X-ray, and it gave me the X-ray, and it literally read it to me like a medical student, like all of it. As you get older and you start looking for things, you look at the X-ray, you don't read it like a medicine, you just go right for whatever the disease process is, and you're like, this is wrong. But this is nice because it literally goes through like the textbook. Because sometimes you do need to remind yourself of the normal, which is really cool. Then the last thing, I did a couple other things, but the other example that was really cool, as an ER doctor, I see a lot of patients that overdose. And unfortunately, when they overdose, they don't come talking to me. They're overdose, unconscious. And a lot of times I'll have a pill bottle in front of me. The ambulance will just throw a bottle at me. And I look at the bottle and there's no label and there's like all these different pills in them. Now I could take the power of ChatGPT, take a picture of it, and then that picture goes uploaded, and then it'll identify it. Now, out of the 4 pills I did, one of them it got right. The other one it hallucinated. The other 2 had no idea what they were. But still, the fact that it could do it, I
Yeah.
was like, that's amazing. And then the last thing I want to say to that is being able to plug that in, take it to the database and saying, okay, this is a Tylenol overdose. And then to tell me this is the antidote and this is the dose. That is what it's going to end up being able to do for me as a provider. Just a quick example.
Right. And that's part just like we're again at the very early stages of this. So as it gains more information and more data as it learns through this process, it's going to get better and better. And I think, Harvey, you already touched upon my next question, which is the analysis of visual images. I have skin lesions and x-rays here. You already gave me a great example of EKGs. But I think part of that is also we're going to continue to learn, and I think this is going to change how we learn and how we teach in medical school and residency. And I think that's a really good, interesting way of looking at this particular tool and its use outside of healthcare, right? Like downstream and upstream effects of both of this technology.
I love that you said that because I've been thinking about this and I'm actually jealous. I've been out of medical school for over 20 years. And if I had this tool today, oh my God, I think not that I'm a horrible doctor, but I think I'd be a better doctor. I'd get there faster. New concepts, I would just eat them up quickly because it's just something to be said about this technology. Case in point, say that there's this new drug, new mechanism, I could literally ask ChatGPT using the plugins to give me a description. But then here's the cool part. I could take that text and say it's a lot of information and I can convert it to an MP3. And on my drive to wherever, I could listen to my lecture of myself of whatever new drug. So these are ways. And then if I'm a visual person, I could take that output, plug it into Dolly and say, hey, give me a picture or diagram to really explain this concept to me. And it'll make those diagrams.
Yeah.
Quickly way of learning, like unreal.
Unreal. Yeah. I'm going to hand it off to Amit for the next question, but I just have if people don't have access to GPT vision, is there a wait list? Can you just walk them kind of quickly through that? I know not everyone has that yet.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you got to pay the $20 a month, and hopefully it stays at $20. Second, I think there's a waiting list that they're phasing people in. I got ChatGPT. I want to say when it first came out. So whenever it first came out, I went ahead and started paying for it. So I have a feeling that it's going to be kind of a waiting list. Now, my son, he just signed up last week. I've been telling him for months to do it. And he was like, Dad, I really wish you would have kept pushing me. He's like, man, this is amazing. And I'm like, I've been telling you for months. And so anyway, my point is this. He has Dolly 3. He has the plugins. He just doesn't have the imaging. Just as an aside, he loves poker. And what he wants to do is put his poker hands and ask ChatGPT what hand should he play and how and what he should fold. So it's kind of funny.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think we got fantastic overviews here from you, Harvey, about how a doctor can leverage these added plugins and the ADA, the data analysis. And I think one aspect which I have explored personally is kind of uploading graphs of continuous glucose monitoring graphs up on the or using the ADA. And what it does, it kind of maps the pixels and it keeps on learning every time you give more graphs to it. So I really see a potential power of the advanced data analysis part of ChatGPT being literally used in data science and analyzing graphs and kind of giving synopsis of an EKG, as you just said, how it beautifully gives. And the power increases the moment you kind of integrate the plugins with it. And then comes the Bing co-search engine coming in because you get the latest output. So, Harvey, with all these added powerful things being there in ChatGPT 4.0, do you really think that standing today, 16th October 2023, that ChatGPT can be really a good ready reference for a doctor or a healthcare professional in their day-to-day work? I mean, you just gave an example of how you've been using to mark out the pills in the emergency department. What are your thoughts on that?
Here's what I think personally. I think as a doctor, we can kind of get away with murder in the sense that I use a stethoscope, I order labs, I get a X-ray, and I don't believe the X-ray. And as a doctor, we have that clinical gestalt that says, you know what, this information is correct, this information is wrong. My based on all the data I'm getting, I'm going to go down this path. With ChatGPT, what my biggest concern is we got to teach the doctors the good, the bad, and the unknown. Because if doctors don't realize that, let's say the reference, that the author's name doesn't match the actual link, or that the link has nothing to do with the article, then they're going to start making mistakes. The classic one is outside of medicine that I'm going to talk about is the lawyers. Some lawyer went out to a judge and quoted all this in law, and it was all hallucinating from ChatGPT. All of it was wrong. And so in healthcare, we can't do that. People will die. Now, is it ready? I think it's in the beginning, baby stages. I think there's some things that we can do. We can do better discharge instructions. We can use the translation feature. We can talk other languages, do that kind of things. Here's the beauty. I feel like it's kind of like different generations. Having this API, just being able to use this software in the background and adding it to your database, adding it to other things that are out there, combine some of those things might be ready for healthcare. Meaning, obviously, everybody knows about the GDPR, HIPAA. Having, say, ChatGPT in the background, plus making sure that you're in a platform that is HIPAA compliant, now is allowing you to use it in healthcare in different ways. And so, are we ready? The answer is maybe, depending how you're doing it, depending what part of the exam, how you're doing. But I think, again, for doctors, we can get away with murder because I can do it in healthcare. I just got to be aware that, hey, this EKG reading is wrong. Just like when we order EKG and at the top it gives you this little baby EKG reading, you know that it's wrong. And you already know that. The problem is right now, a lot of people are like scared of ChatGPT and they're like, oh, no, this is hallucinating, this is wrong, can't be used in healthcare. No, I think it's like you got to be a doctor on it.
You
So
gotta,
I think
go ahead, Amit. Sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No,
I think so just that what I was just trying to make a point here is that we should not be taking the outputs that is coming on the face value straight up. Rather, we should be kind of looking a little into it, kind of deciphering it, whether the output, like he said, the references should match, with the links which is provided. So those kind of things needs to be done. And I've personally seen one thing is that if you give the same prompt in a different context repeatedly, it keeps learning and it generally gives you a better output the next time. So there is always a phase of learning and giving you a better output every time you kind of work with it on the same context. It kind of learns in what you're looking at and it tries to evolve and give you a better output. So while that might minimize the errors or the hallucinations that we're talking about, we still should not be taking the output coming completely on the face value, rather analyze it and then just take out the cream of how much you need and go along with it. I think that's the point that Harvey is trying to make here. But going ahead, I really personally feel that the sky is going to be the limit, and the potential of that being a ready reference reckoner for healthcare professional is definitely there. Dipu.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think what I was going to say is it's important that we use this as a tool because that's what it's meant to be used as. And then you really need to, especially as healthcare providers, our spidey sense needs to be up at all times, right? To use like a comic hero or superhero thing, because in fact, what it does help is help mitigate some of the biases that we bring into this as humans, but then it will have hallucinations and biases of its own because it is itself trained on biased data, right? And so the spidey sense needs to be up on both sides of this, the human side as well as the bot side. So that's basically what I was going to say. So to talk about patient care, Harvey, the next part of it was from a patient perspective. We have seen a lot of patients using it for health, lifestyle guidance, health guidance, and you kind of touched upon, yes, it's important for like patients kind of use it differently than healthcare providers. Where do you think we're going to be in the next, let's say, I would say 3 months, because I know that seems really short, but at the rate that this is moving, I think it's important, like, let's just go by 3 weeks, 3 months, and a year from now. How useful is it in terms of virtual health bots, like assistance, mental health support, lifestyle and knowledge sharing from a patient perspective?
Yeah, from a patient's perspective, I think it's going to be huge. I used to work in front of an airport, and we got people from all over the world. And
Mhm.
honestly, there were some people that I tried to talk to, and my language translator didn't have their language. And so, how cool if ChatGPT would be able to communicate? And my point is, I'm going to focus on communication. ChatGPT will help better communication from the doctor to the patient. How many times have, as a provider, you talk to a patient and they look at you like, I don't know what he just said, and you ask them, and they're like, "No, I understood," and they don't understand.
Yeah, yeah.
Why not use ChatGPT to change my voice and talk as if I was talking to a 4-year-old? Sometimes our medical brain talks all these abstract things, and it's really hard, even if you've done it a million times. But why not ask ChatGPT to help you? So I think we're going to start seeing more tools where ChatGPT is talking in language. My favorite example is there's a hospital in England that takes the discharge instructions and converted it from like a pediatric to the language of a 4-year-old, just the
Mm.
basic terms. And then they use something like Midjourney or Dolly, and they put it together and made a coloring book. And so when the child leaves, they go home with a coloring book of their discharge instructions. And I'm like, that is what we're going to start seeing here in
Amazing.
the next couple of weeks and months and years. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's amazing. And that's a great example of use case and really meeting the patient where they are, right? Like you're educating the child and the parent at the same time. And I think that's a great example of it. Amit?
Yeah. So, what I was kind of trying to understand here is that in terms of the patient's perspective, I have kind of seen the way it empathizes and gives the lifestyle support guidance. I think it would do at par with a doctor or with a
Mhm.
healthcare professional, and it would just keep on learning. Even I've seen it give some fantastic dietary outputs. Not saying that it will replace a dietitian, but then again, it would be a good, friendly chatbot to the patient, kind of taking them through, as it goes along. And I think also from the patient's perspective, the more they kind of give in the prompts, that more it learns about its ailment and its needs and requirements, and it customizes the output. So, Harvey, back to you. Whether it's a patient, whether it's a doctor, or any other healthcare professional, just a quick tip before we head into a short break and come back is that how do we kind of train this GPT models to give customized prompts and give me better output? Some quick tips for our audience.
Yeah. So think of your friend in a way of referencing things, giving them the backstory. If you need some advice, you don't just start saying, "Hey, how do I do this?" You always give a little backstory. So using that analogy, when you're asking ChatGPT, the more backstory you can give, the more factual of which way you're kind of wanting it to go. You're driving the ship. You're telling ChatGPT what you want. And so the more you can start with the backside of that and then ask your question. And then here's the beauty: if you don't like the answer, then see how it responded, and you can either do one or two things. There's a little button there that says like refresh, so it's almost like you ask it again without doing anything, because it may say, you know what, I gave you my best shot, let me give you another one. Or you can say, okay, I see what you said, I'm actually liking point number 2 and 3, give me more.
Right.
Before we take that break, I want to jump into one quick thing about what you just said, nutrition. This is a cool example. Here in the United States, we got this thing called Instacart. It's basically you put in all your groceries and then they literally deliver it to your home. What I think as a doctor, what we could do to help in nutrition, say I have a diabetic, hemoglobin A1C of like 10, say I need help with their diet. I say, hey, my patient hates eggs, they're allergic to peanuts. Give me a diet for Monday through Friday. Give me their recipe and give me all the ingredients, and then put it into Instacart. And then when the patient gets home, they're going to have all those ingredients, and it's based on information that you agree with. amazing way of taking care of a patient.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. What a great way of using this, and really, again, meeting the patient where they are and taking the guesswork out of it.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating, and I think one place where it's really going to be very useful, and this is a place that personally I would really like to explore, is in the place of chronic metabolic medicine, because it's a continuous disease process, and you really need some kind of a friend. By what Harvey said, I kind of synchronize with what he said, kind of a female friend or a male friend that'll sync with you, with your thought process, with your disease and your ailments, and you can just imagine the power of it taking you through the disease, giving you medication reminders, kind of giving you mental support. I think that would be a really fascinating aspect to look at. But again, we need to take the outputs very carefully, because some misinformations may be there, and that has to be taken in very carefully. But before we go into those aspects of ChatGPT, we're going to come back with a quick break, because this is a high-end, high-energy meeting. So we all need some break. We're going to come back in about a minute, and we are going to see you on the other side of this break. Thank you very much. We'll just join.
Yeah.
All right, welcome back. We are back after a break, and I hope you had some thoughts in your mind about what you're going to ask us in the second half of this discussion. And okay, Dipu, what's the next question for Harvey?
Yeah, so let's pivot to talk about some of the, I guess, the misgivings of ChatGPT in terms of how it can perpetuate misinformation and disinformation. One of the concerns that we all have, I mean, healthcare providers and or patients and everyone as a society, is how easy it would be for someone to kind of disseminate disinformation and misinformation. How do we learn how to deal with this and put guardrails around this? Because I know we're actively, from a policy perspective at least, grappling with this.
There's different ways of doing it. I love ChatGPT, but I think it's going to be, I'm going to joke when I say this, it's going to be like ChatGPT 8 or 9 by the time it really gets it to where we need it. My personal take is we need the data to be the right data for the right persons. For me, I'm an ER doctor, so in theory, I should have my own ER GPT equivalent that's just for ER, that has been trained only on ER medicine. And let me take it another step. Just because I'm in the United States and I know there's people from all over the world listening to this, I think we should have an ER GPT for your country specific, because that country has data, has certain biases for that data, as opposed to if people around the world are using ChatGPT, great, but unfortunately that data wasn't trained for your country. And because of biases and issues, I really think to fix that, the fastest way is just create your own GPT equivalent. And I know that sounds horrible to say, but here's the deal. I think if you're very specific on your task, if you're very certain what you're wanting, you don't need this limousine. You may just need, like, a little Ford car or something simple. So that's my take.
Yeah, no, and I will just add to that is that one of the ways of doing this is by using it, right? The more we use it, the more guardrails it starts understanding from a cultural point of view. But I agree with you. I think I would even go as far as saying it needs to be regional, because
Oh
what
yeah.
you do in your state is different than what I do in my state, and certainly different where what Amit does in his state and where he's located, right? So.
Yeah, and then to add to another layer to that, I don't want to go into the weeds, but to mention that would be to do federated learning, to
Yes.
go and use every hospital system. Just because, let's just say I'm in New York, doesn't mean all the hospitals in New York are equal. And so that data is different. So we really need to dissect this out even further.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that is really very important, and that's why the integration is going to come in real time, because you're going to get real time data analysis, very customized outputs coming in, and I think that's going to minimize the misinformation. Just not that, it will also perhaps help us in getting more refined data without hallucination. The more the number of layers they put in, I think the hallucination is going to improve. So let's see. Hopefully, some promising days ahead. Harvey, that brings me to another question. That I mean, no one taught us how to use the internet, and like what I said in the beginning, and some of us, the three of us at least, we've been exploring ChatGPT from November 2022 since it was launched. So, what about our healthcare professional friends listening to this? What are your tips for them? Is there any trick up the sleeves that they should master to kind of use Chat GPT, or you just learn it as you go along?
That's a tough one. I'm biased. I'm going to say you got to listen to this podcast. You're going to have to listen to other influencers to learn how to use it correctly and learn the different tips. I'm a very visual person. So when I see a video, I see a graph, I'm like, wow, I learn it really quickly. And I think healthcare professionals would agree with that. They feel the same. Um, I think also to part of it is like riding a bike. And then I want to make sure that you compare apples with apples. I see doctors that try it and they're like, "Oh, I hate ChatGPT," and I'm like, "Which edition did you use?" They're like, "Oh, I use the free edition." I'm like, "Do me a favor, pay $20 for a month, play with the paid edition, and you'll see that you're driving a limousine versus a Cadillac or versus a Ford cardigan." And so I think it's important for us to make sure that when we are critiquing, give it a fair shot and do a good job. And I think you'll see a better output.
Right. And and just to kind of piggy off of that, when we were early on in when the internet came by and Google, right? We went from Dr. Google to now Dr. Chat GPT. So, and there was a learning curve with that. There was a trust factor with that, right? Now, I'm not saying that we trust everything Google spits out at us, right? We shouldn't. But I think the similar learning curve is going to have to be in play with Chat GPT. So when it comes to understanding what the value that ChatGPT can bring to your practice is a matter of doing a little bit of both, right? You have to play with it, you have to learn with it, and learn the basics of these large language models, which ChatGPT is one of many that are out there right now in our and then there's ones that are currently in development that are specific for medicine. Harvey, are you able to kind of touch upon those and how those will impact clinical practice and patient interactions for us?
Yeah, so the easiest one to talk about is Microsoft Epic and OpenAI got in bed together. And basically, for those that don't know what Epic is just your electronic medical record. And what they're doing is, one of the pain points for all clinicians is when we see a patient, and especially if they're a repeat patient that's been there so much that they have this big file, it'd be nice to be able to just say, hey, give me the pertinent positive. Tell me the last MRI. Tell me why they're here, what the specialist said, and what the thing. And instead of having to read all of that, gives you a nice summary. Apparently, that feature is already out. I don't have access to Epic, but apparently that's there. So, why is this so important? I feel like as a clinician, we're going to start seeing these tools, and it's somewhat of a guardrails. It's going to be the FDA because the FDA is going to say, "Wait a second, this is a medical tool. This is going to make decisions for you. I'm not going to allow this. It needs to be proven." Big picture, this is a big black box. It can't be explained how it's doing. It can't be reproduced. So it's going to have to be some other way of doing the same technology to get there. The last thing I want to say, I have no ownership in Glass Health, but that's another company that's out there. They
Good.
basically are giving clinicians an ability to put in a patient vignette, and then it gives you a differential diagnosis. It gives you a plan, which is kind of nice. If they're not careful, it may become a medical device, and then at that point, they have to go through the FDA, so they're gonna have to be really careful how they move forward. The other one, again, I have no ownership or investment, is Hippocratic AI, and they're doing a lot of things using AI. I've been trying to look at their press releases and try to get a hold of the company, get more information, but again, we're gonna start seeing all these companies going out there using this kind of technology in healthcare.
Right. And I think, Amit, before you just comment, I will just say that we're going to see more and more mergers of healthcare institutions and organizations with tech. Harvey mentioned one such partnership with EMR and Microsoft. There will be others that will be forthcoming soon, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's just not Chat GPT. We are talking about generative AI as a whole. And if you look at the prospect and uh, and the whole umbrella of that generative AI can cover, the context in healthcare is actually going to be transformative. And I would really like to hear from both of you. Just not Chat GPT. You have the Google Bard, and again, standing today, do you really see, and what is the magnitude of the transformation that you see these LLMs bringing in the way we actually perceive and practice medicine in healthcare? I'll go with Harvey first.
Medical knowledge doubles every 30 days. To give you a little reference point, back in 1950, you could literally sit in your living room, not worry about reading a single journal, because medical knowledge doubled every 50 years. And so now it's really important for us to stay up to date. And so, giving a quick example, this is how this technology is going to be able to give us something in our inbox that's going to basically tell us everything that we need to know about my ER education, or learning a new concept or a new drug. It's going to become really quickly that we can disseminate this information, and that day is coming.
Absolutely. I would agree. I think you're right. The flip side of this is that because the information is doubling so quickly for us, or even tripling, is that there's no way we as humans can actually hold all of that information in our heads, right? So we need a tool that is going to summarize things for us to a point where we can provide the highest quality of care for our patients in the safest manner possible, without having to read that file, which I have, right? Like I have had in my years of practice, people wheel in a folder and a medical record that's about this thick, and I'm like, okay, I can probably spend about 5 minutes reading this before I have to treat the patient. Whereas something like ChatGPT and other generative AI models would be able to summarize the most salient points of that giant file for me, so that I can then provide the care in an acute setting as well as a chronic setting. So I think it will change how we deliver care. It will change how we educate ourselves and the next generation. In fact, my kids are already using it. To Harvey's point, his son is finally on board for his own thing, but my kids are already using it to study and kind of make facts a little bit more sticky for their own learning purposes. And I think I come at it from both a clinical and an educator standpoint, which is I need to know how this works, because the next class I enroll and we enroll is going to likely be using this already. So I need to know how to best prepare them for this.
Yeah, I would like to add a little kind of play the role of a devil's advocate here. Why we are looking at a silver lining on the sky, and we are talking about all the positives of generative AI models, ChatGPT. We also see a good threat, I would say, of de-skilling the profession, because you would get too much dependent at times in summarizing it. Now, having said that, there will be a context where most of your repetitive tasks will be taken up by these NLPs and by these LLMs that would make your job much easier. You will spend more time connecting with your patient and spending more time with your family. But we would be risking, kind of reading papers as a full, because we know that it can be just given to a model to kind of summarize and giving me the output. What I'm trying to say here is very simple. Now, while we use these tools, we need to use it very responsibly, because at times, even today, while we're using ChatGPT, Harvey has explored the X-rays and the EKGs and the skin lesions. I've exploded with CGM graphs. We can really see it is throwing off the records results. So we have to be very careful when we are taking in these outputs and we are using it in our practice. What is very important, if I can summarize it for all of us in one line, and then we can take a quick one-liner from the both of you, is that we have to use these generative AI models, especially ChatGPT, Google Bard, very responsibly. The output can be very specific. At the same time, it can just kind of throw you off with a completely hallucinated output. So you have to use it very carefully, and you should know what kind of prompt to give in so that you can get the best output. So what is very important, we have to learn about these things just a little bit to leverage it. And that's where somebody like Harvey and Dipu is doing a fantastic work out there in educating people how to leverage the use of AI. Now, we are almost at the end of this discussion today, a fantastic, energetic discussion today we had. And a quick word, some take-home tips, very important take-home tips from you, Harvey. I think that's what the audience is waiting for.
That's a tough one. I think at the end of the day, I'm going to encourage everybody not to be scared. And the fact that you're listening to this podcast tells me you want to learn more. Some quick things to know is, literally recent news, the SEC is who governs the stock exchange here in the United States. They literally came out and said that in the next 10 years, AI is going to disrupt the market and probably going to make the market crash. With that kind of statement from the head of the SEC tells me that they're looking at this as literally a disruptor. And so because it's a disruptor, we can't take this lightly. We have to learn. It's almost like not knowing how to drive in a way. If you don't know how to drive, you can't get out. And I know people out there like, oh, I have a Tesla, it can drive me. No, you know what I mean. I mean, big picture, you need to learn this as a tool. Just like as a doctor that you see a doctor not have a stethoscope, fast forward, the standard of care is going to be using AI. Not using AI is going to be criminal. Not using AI is going to violate your Hippocratic oath. And so think of it in those kind of harsh terms, because I really think that is the future. I think in the next 6 months, we're going to start seeing lawsuits that of certain hospitals that haven't turned to certain aspects of AI, and I do see that happening. So I just kind of want to leave you with those deep thoughts. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help.
Yeah.
Dipu.
Well, now that Harvey has told me I cannot retire anytime soon, since the stock market's going to crash, we're just going to have to keep working more and more. But and which is great, because I have to say, after a really long time, and I've been in medicine for a couple of decades now, I truly do feel optimistic about this technology and this tool in its ability to really help with a workforce burnout, which we're already starting to see some of the early effects of this, and then truly democratize access to care, because much like any disruptive technology, while it will disrupt certain areas, it will certainly enhance areas where we are as a workforce are lacking in terms of providing care to communities that may not have this technology. We have a long way to go. Believe me, there are areas as all over the world that don't have access to internet and things like that, where this kind of technology is needed. But I do think that this will expedite those challenges that we have faced. So I'll pause there, and I will hand it off to Harshita for questions from the audience.
Yeah, so thank you. And we do have a couple of questions. So let's begin with the first one. So are there any alternative tools similar to ChatGPT that are both promising and reliable?
That's a tough one. I'm biased. I think ChatGPT is a leader. With that said, there's this thing called token size, which is just imagine the amount of information we can have a conversation together. So the ability to upload a book, you can't do that right now with ChatGPT. With that said, I think that is coming. So there's another tool out there that's called Claude AI, which is kind of cool. I feel like when I use it personally, I feel like it hallucinates, but it doesn't have the a lot of the other tools like the plugins and whatnot. I am gonna say everybody is not happy with Bard. I'm gonna tell you, get it. Make sure you log into Bard in the next week, and then keep an eye out whenever they announce that the back engine is Gemini. On that day, I want you to play on Bard, and I would fair to say that it's going to be at least as good, if not, it's gonna maybe even better than ChatGPT as far as the conversation.
Yeah, I would say play with all of them, really, because I use them. I think Bard is better for some things right now than others. I can see where Harvey makes that point.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. I mean, we should be kind of exploring each one of them and seeing, like, what ways. But yes, from the user interface point of view at the moment, ChatGPT scores over others. I think that's for sure.
Harvey, you're teasing us. I'm just going to follow up on the question. You're teasing us with Gemini. Tell us more about that.
So Gemini is unreal. Gemini, just to give you an idea, Google ChatGPT was trained on like a 12 trillion token, 12 trillion like parameters. Supposedly, Google, think of it, it's using YouTube, all the internet, everything. It's supposed to be trained on something like 10, or I forget if it's 10 or 100 times higher magnitude. So I was thinking, I was like, holy cow, if it's doing that kind of training, experts out there are saying that this will be 10 to 20 times stronger than ChatGPT. So I think personally, this is why ChatGPT is launching all these things, because they know it's happening this quarter. And so it's going to be really cool to watch. And I call it the AI wars, what's going to happen, when Google comes out, will ChatGPT 5 suddenly emerge like, oh, we have it. We didn't train it, but it was trained before Congress asked me if it was being trained. So I can't wait to see.
So I think that gives more the reason why doctors should learn AI and leverage it, because you don't want to get into the tug of war of the titans. You really want to have your own voice and your own understanding out there. And I think that's the sole motto and the sole thought with which we started this podcast series. Quickly, Harvey has to leave. Harshita, what's the second question?
Yeah, so What's next after ChatGPT? Like considering the ongoing advancements in AI, can we anticipate it to remain a reliable tool in the future?
Yeah, I honestly think I'm gonna say I'm personally working with different companies to create their own GPT equivalent. So I can tell you what's gonna come out. It's gonna blow your mind. Just think of it. I'll give a quick example. This is not what I'm working on, but everybody knows if God forbid somebody dies, not everybody knows CPR. My idea is in the future, Apple will have, or some other Google device will have it on your phone. So if you don't have internet, who cares? The large language model of iPhone 15 currently has, it's on the large language model is on the iPhone, the new iPhone. So my point is this, someone is dying, you don't know what to do. I really think in the near future, it'll be on our phone and it can walk you through CPR and save a life. And I think that it's going to be here. Really, I see it next year.
Yeah, just like you're expecting your wearables to kind of have the NLP integration and API integration, and it's going to walk you through. I mean, that's probably the next. Dipu.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say Star Trek is coming to life for us in our lifetimes, which is pretty amazing. Where they're just going to scan you, and you'll be able to kind of with your camera scan someone and figure out what's wrong. So yeah.
Yeah. So having said all that, we all need to stay updated because there is amazing advancements happening each and every day. I mean, I run through LinkedIn posts of Harvey and Dipu. We keep learning each day, newer developments coming in. So we need to stay updated. We need to stay focused, and we need to continue to leverage the use of AI for better healthcare and better practice. That's very important. So I think that brings us to the end of today's discussion. Thank you very much, Harvey, for joining us with your precious time. It was lovely having you. Thank you, Dipu. It's always a pleasure to co-host with you, and thank you both of you for your time. Harshita, I'll hand it back to you. But before we end, we're going to come back in a couple of weeks with another exciting podcast, and that's where we are going to explore the use of artificial intelligence and maybe even generative AI in medical research and medical writing. So stay tuned for that podcast coming in the first week of November. Over to you, Harshita.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Harvey, Dr. Amit, and Dr. Dipu for answering our audience's question. And it's wonderful to learn from experts like you about the latest technologies. And as we draw the curtains on this remarkable session, a big thank you to our audience for joining us today. Keep November 9th marked in your calendar as we return with our next episode. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Until next time, take care, stay healthy, goodbye.